Iran carried out a massive missile attack against Israel yesterday. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has the latest on that attack and its aftermath.
As Israel assesses the damage this morning from Iran's biggest attack ever against the country, one thing is clear. It could have been so much worse. Iran launched around 200 bus-sized missiles at Israel. Most were shot down by Israeli and American air defenses. A few slipped through the net. But despite all the Iranian firepower, only one person was killed, a Palestinian man, a victim of falling debris near the Jordanian border. As Israelis braced for the Iranian assault, adding to the chaos of the moment, two gunmen opened fire at a light rail stop in Tel Aviv, killing at least 7 Israelis in an apparently unrelated attack. Moments later, the Iranian missiles started streaming in. We saw it unfold as missiles flew over Lebanon toward Israel.
Well, there is a lot of activity in the sky here as well. I think you can see some of these flashes of light. So this is a massive campaign, a massive amount of air defenses.
For about an hour, it looked like a ballistic missile 4th of July as Israeli and American air defenses sprung into action at high altitude.
There could be enormous consequences for Iran, enormous consequences for the entire region based on what is happening here.
Iran said the attack was its response to Israel's assassinations of a Hamas leader in Tehran and the leader of Hezbollah in Beirut. As some cheered in Tehran, Iran said if Israel responds, the operation will be repeated with much higher magnitude. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel will respond, and the Pentagon is expecting it. President Biden expressed full American support for Israel.
The attack appears to have been defeated and ineffective.
Now the entire Middle East is on edge, expecting an Israeli reprisal. The only questions are how severe it will be and when.
NBC's Richard Engel reporting there. Joining us now, former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Kareem Sajapur, and retired 4-star Army General Barry McCaffrey. He is an NBC News military analyst. Gentlemen, good morning to you all. Ambassador, I'll start with you here. It remains amazing that given the scope of that attack, there were no casualties in Israel, thanks to the Iron Dome and the support of the American military as well. You have said Israel has no choice but to respond. What do you believe is an appropriate response?
Hey, Willie. Good morning. It's a tough morning, very much. And Israel hasn't fully recovered from what went through yesterday. In addition to these rocket attacks, and my family, my grandkids are all in bomb shelters, the horrendous terrorist attack in Jaffa, literally on my street. Where people ran into my building to get cover. So this is all intensely personal. Israel has to respond. Of course it has to respond. And it has to respond painfully for the Iranians and massively. It can't be tit for tat. It's got to be more than that. The Iranians have to internalize that if they commit this type of aggression against the Jewish state, we're going to respond and we're going to exact a very painful price for them. It's the only way. And right to this point, Iran has really not paid a price for any of this. They're behind all the wars in the Middle East. It's Iran. It's Iran and its proxies. It's Hezbollah and Hamas, the Houthis, the militias in Syria and Iraq. Iran has to pay that price. We very much appreciate the support we received from the United States, from President Biden, from the U.S. military in the area, knocking down these missiles with our defenses. But at the end of the day, we also believe that the United States has to exact the price.
So what did that price look like? There's been some talk of attacking military targets, perhaps even going after the nuclear program. Do you think the nuclear program of Iran should be on the table?
Definitely on the table. Everything has to be on the table. Nothing can be immune, including Iranian leaders, including the Ayatollahs themselves are on the table.
As targets?
As targets, just like Hassan Nasrallah was, the head of Hezbollah. And he was under 60 feet of concrete. Right? And, Israel does not have strategic bombers. We don't have B-1s, B-2s like the United States that can drop a 50,000-pound bomb from 50,000 feet in the air. We don't have that. We have these small planes called F-15s, F-16s, F-35s. But you see, with the type of technology we have, the type of coordination, and our pilots, we can even get at Hassan Nasrallah.
General McCaffrey, the political and the military realities on the ground in the Middle East as well as anyone. The ambassador just said that Iran has to pay a, quote, painful and massive price. What are, first of all, what are the risks of that? What are the risks of a regional war? And what would your recommendation be if you were advising President Biden right now?
Well, I think the Biden administration appropriately is still arguing to prevent a regional war. So we've seen a relentless work by Secretary of State Tony Blinken and Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary, to try and argue people back off the edge. Now, having said that, this is the second Iranian mass attack on the state of Israel. These are flashbang times of 10 to 12 minutes from the ground to hitting in Israel. Many of them are getting through. These are 2-ton warheads. It is unarguable that the Israelis cannot tolerate living under this situation. At the same time, they've got 80,000 civilians that have been run out of their homes in the northern part of Israel, facing a threat of well over 100,000 missiles held by Hezbollah and maybe 60,000 fighters. Fortunately, the IDF and Mossad have shredded Hezbollah's chain of command, but they cannot eliminate this threat with just commando raids and air power. So they've brought up now a third Israeli division. At some point, they've got to go into South Lebanon and try and eliminate the missile threat. These are painful days for Israel. They have every right to consider every option, but the Israeli Air Force does not have the power to eliminate the nuclear program in Iran. If the U.S. air power went after them, it'd take us 30 to 90 days to knock it out. What the Israelis can do is set Karg Island on fire and make a massive impact on the Iranian economy. But the consequences, the follow-on consequences, are hard to gauge. These are days of great peril.
Right. So, General, unlike a lot of people that are running my former party, I'm a conservative. So I hope for the best, but I always plan for the worst. I and a lot of people took their eye off the ball in 2003. We're overly optimistic going into Iraq. And we didn't plan for the worst case scenario when we paid. I want you right now, if you can, talk to our policy leaders. Give us, and I completely agree with what you've said about Israel, but give our policy leaders watching today the worst case scenario if a regional war breaks out.
Well, first of all, a regional war will not involve U.S. ground combat forces. The Israelis do not need our divisions on the ground. There's a massive amount of U.S. air and naval power in the region. It's quite possible that if Israelis' existence was at stake, that we would directly enter the war against Iran. So I think that's a message of deterrence by the Biden administration to the Iranians, and they'll follow through on it. But at the end of the day, if we ignite a regional war, if the Strait of Hormuz is closed off, if the Red Sea continues to be interdicted by this small band of terrorists in Yemen, if we see a continuation of Gaza destroyed, a lot of Hamas killed or eliminated as a threat, but no pan-Arab peacekeeping force that's willing to intervene and replace the IDF in terms of security, then we're going to see a period of enormous peril with economic consequences to the globe. So that's what's at stake. We have no option but to stand behind Israel, a democracy, a capitalistic economy, rights of women, rule of law. They're surrounded, beleaguered by enemies. We're going to have to stay with the Israelis on this one.
So, Kareem, you're an expert on Iran. Let's talk about their perspective now. Give us your sense as to why their response yesterday looked the way it did. Significant in number, though it turned out to be largely ineffective. And also, what must the calculations be in Tehran right now as to how to respond to what Israel's inevitable response would be? Because a regional war could end up in regime change.
This is a regime in Iran which has always been committed to its ideology, but also its survival. And I think their calculations yesterday was that over the course of the last 6 weeks, Israel had carried out some pretty significant operations against Iran and Iran's proxies. It assassinated the leader of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, in Tehran. It's taken out Hezbollah's top leadership. And when Iran didn't react to those provocations, they probably felt that they were projecting weakness and vulnerability and would invite even more Israeli action. So they took action yesterday, as our colleague said. In my view, there was a much more significant action that they took last April, and it's going to warrant major Israeli retaliation. And I am not sure if the regime in Tehran is really braced for what's about to come to them.
So let's talk about what that could look like and their hold over their own people in terms of, is this something they're going to have to perpetuate this fight in order just to stay in power at home?
This regime, the Islamic Republic of Iran, is like a late-stage Soviet Union. It's a regime which is ideologically and increasingly economically bankrupt. And they want to have external hostility in order to justify internal repression. And so this is something we have to be very mindful of. At the end of the day, my view is there's never going to be lasting peace and stability in the Middle East until we have a government in Iran that pursues its national interests rather than revolutionary ideology. But there are no quick fixes here in terms of either Israeli or U.S. military action that will bring about such a government. I think we have to really be mindful of the last 2 decades of history in the Middle East here.